Hello and welcome back to SPO's new podcast, All My Life, where we take deep dives into lifelong discipleship. My name is Emma. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Ryan.
Man, Ryan, that song gets me every time. I swear my name is in it.
It is. I can hear it.
Yeah.
It's like Emma.
It's like a little call out every time.
Emma.
Yeah.
If you listen closely, it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Emma. Yeah, this is super great. Guess who's here?
Is it Justin Bieber?
It is. It is. Justin Bieber. So you were in Japan because sometimes.
Well, it's Johnny.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Johnny Vrba.
Johnny Vrba. Johnny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Dude, it is great to have you here. Maybe we'll talk about the time that there were people in another country who mistook you for Justin Bieber.
Indeed.
But before we get there, you don't have as much hair today on your head. The only hair you have left on your head are eyebrows.
Or your mustache.
Yeah, there was a mustache the last time we saw you. There was a full head of hair. What happened?
February 24th, 2020, I sailed on the most catastrophic voyage of semester at sea in history. This is a study abroad program on a cruise ship. So it's basically like Sweet Life, Zach and Cody. And
the dream.
There's a tradition in like maritime law and Navy vessels where you cross the equator and you basically get hazed. You get fish thrown at you, slapped at you. You get a fire hose on your stomach. They can't do that in a school program. So instead, they dump a bucket of slime like Nickelodeon. They have us kiss a dead fish. Optional, of course.
Yeah.
And then you shave your head. Also optional. A couple ladies did it, which was pretty bold because that's 3 to 4 year commitment, obviously. I also had really cool hair at the time. I had frosted tips.
Yeah, you did. Of course you did.
Ooh.
I had just dyed my hair blonde. And I shaved my head. There was this guy who had never said the name of Jesus before. I wasn't really in my conversion at the time, and I didn't want to do it. People were screaming my name. Herbert said, "Hey, did you ask Jesus if he cares what you look like?" And he says that comment, and I go, "Oh, no, he definitely doesn't. I'm going to shave my head right now and get rid of the attachment to my looks. Stop, fixing my hair and my phone reflection, all that stuff." And it was so liberating for me.
So that was on February 24th, 2020. Have you shaved your head since? Is that like something like you did it February 24th, 2023? Have you done that since? Yeah,
so this year is my 4th time. 2020, 21, 22, and now 23. So I'll shave it every single year for the rest of my life on that date in remembrance and in also in penance for Lent. It happens to be the first Good Friday of Lent every year.
Yeah. Wow. You said it was liberating.
Yeah.
What was liberating about it?
I realized that the reason I didn't want to shave my head was simply because I didn't want to look like an egg.
Because wait, you said
okay.
And why did I not want to?
You thought, I'm like, wait. Did you really think I am going to look like an egg?
Yeah, like egghead. I didn't want to be bald. And the reason I didn't want to be bald is because I didn't want the girls to see me bald. And the reason I want them to see me bald is because I liked the girls. I wanted them to like me. And I thought that I would be, less attractive. And I liked, regardless of what they thought, it was about the disposition of my heart. And I liked my hair. I was attached to it.
Yeah.
And so I had to, if your head gets too big, shave it. And that's kind of what happened. At the time, I had no mustache, but now I've since had a mustache. And so that goes with it too.
Have you ever thought about shaving your eyebrows?
Yes, that happened. It did not happen any of the years, but it'd be bad for mission. And nothing that's bad for mission I can do. So you can't have a missionary walking up to you with
That'd
an
be
eyebrow.
reasonable, yeah.
That's totally fair. That's a cool story.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
But it was just on a moment's notice. You kind of made that decision. Everybody's doing it. You're like, I'm in. Or did you have some time to think about it? You just went for it.
I'm glad you asked. This is kind of the most crucial part of the story that I kind of left out. If a group of people, usually more than one, are screaming my name to do something, there is a 10 out of 10 chance, Ryan, that I'm going to do that thing. Whatever it is. That's led me to a lot of sin in my college years, as you can imagine.
I was going to say, that sounds like that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
It can be both. Yeah. And in this chance, it was not a good or bad thing. It was just something that, shave your head. Me being someone who loves attention, me not wanting to do that thing was very bizarre. So there was something deeper. They're chanting, Johnny, Johnny, and I walked away from it. So I had these moments of going back and forth, and finally, that's when Herbert said, "Hey, man, if you ask Jesus," out of nowhere, we had never talked about, and then his name is actually what got me thinking, whoa, he's really all I'm trying to impress. And like, Jesus is who I'm trying to live my life for if I had faith. And at that time, that was like the start of my conversion. Crazy.
So you resisted like the chance initially.
Yes.
That was hard.
Yes, that was hard because I wanted to give in. But if I gave in, then I would regret, I don't have my hair now. Now girls can't pull my hair. Girls can't do this, whatever, you know?
Wow.
Dude, I've never heard a start to a conversion story like that.
Yeah. And it was glorious. This old man, John, was shaky. He's rickety. He's going through. I'm like, Jack, get somebody else in here. So we got a younger person shaving my head. He was going to saw my head. It was scary. I had to sub him out, but.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
My mom hates when I do it every single year. She's like, Johnny, this year, I'll give you more in your mutual funds, whatever you need. Just please don't.
Just don't shave your head.
Sorry, Mom.
So is it true that if you're scuba diving or you're sleeping is the only time you'd go an hour without talking?
Yes, this is true.
Have you ever, okay, this week, that needs to be different. This week, what do we got to do?
I agree. Even in prayer, I'm kind of mumbling my prayers under my breath. I like to say things aloud just to know that it helps me not get distracted.
Are you extroverted?
Yes.
That was a joke. Of course you are. No, but no, say like really, like you really don't, you haven't experienced like say a full hour of silence when you're not if you're not scuba diving or sleeping.
Yeah. If we're praying, if we're in mass, you're never silent for an hour. If I'm listening to a talk, I'm kind of interjecting. I'm like laughing. There's always something coming out of it's never just breath. And when you're scuba diving, you have the regulator in and all this and that, you cannot talk at all. And I think that's really the only time for an hour or more that I'm silent.
So what do you love about so what did you learn about yourself when you're scuba diving and you didn't talk for an hour?
Or make noise, yeah.
I learned that we can communicate. Well, it's true what they say about nonverbal communication, that you speak, whatever the percentage is, I'm going to butcher it now, but it's more than your verbal speaking. Yeah. If I'm talking to you on stage, like the audio doesn't match the video. If you're speaking and you're excited about something, but your face isn't changing, then you're not excited. And so that was one thing, just by not talking and having my thoughts to myself. But really, scuba diving is also a very slow activity. And so I'm moving very slowly. We're swimming slowly. Every movement, every adjustment of your buoyancy is all done slow. Nothing is done quickly. And everything above the surface for me on land is just like jittery, fast twitch, all over the place. It's very nice to slow down. And usually the rest of the day after I finish a scuba dive or multiple, I am so relaxed. And it makes no sense because I'm in an environment that's not meant for me. We're not meant to do that. We see the fish swimming around so effortlessly. And it makes us think.
What would it take this week? Where would you go? What would you do to spend 61 minutes in silence?
The dream would be to go in an ice shanty by myself and ice fish quite silently to myself. I'd love to do that.
So would it need to be something active like that? You couldn't just go into a church. You're like wincing, like, I don't know, that'd be tough, right?
Maybe an hour of adoration.
I don't know.
Even then, for our nightly, we cut the night, some of the guys in the house, from 3 to 4 a.m. every other Thursday. Or once a month, some regularity like that. And that still gets interrupted by people coming in and out, and we'll greet, like just even any little whisper. I guess that's not super important, but yeah. I think I could do that in church.
Would you share? I'd love for you to hear back, like let us know how that goes.
Yeah, I will.
Wow.
It's a great insight. I'll do that.
That's cool. Do you scuba dive a lot?
I've been on about 13 dives, and that's my favorite activity. I would love to go on more scuba dives.
Was that a lot of that semester at sea that you did that, or was it other?
Only 3 were on the semester at sea, but the majority were before, on family vacations.
What's the most beautiful place you've seen, or what's the most beautiful thing you've seen during a dive?
We were off the coast of Mauritius, which is the smallest African country. It's also an island by Madagascar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a guy at Seton Hall when I was a missionary there who was from there, Anthony.
Anthony from Mauritius?
Yeah.
I've never met anyone from Mauritius. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
He was involved there.
Mark Twain is quoted by saying, God made Mauritius, and then he made heaven after Mauritius. Mauritius is that beautiful. It has underwater waterfalls. We didn't scuba dive there because there's actually water flowing off this underwater. It's beautiful. The coolest thing I saw was a sea of manta rays. And there were hundreds of them, all above us, and we were rising. It was the end of our dive. We had turned our dive, meaning the halfway point was over, and we were coming up, and we just looked up, and the sun blotted out, but not in like a Arrows type of 300 movie way, in a beautiful manta ray, flowy, and it just casted shadows all over us, and then we finished the surface, and it was just cool to see schools of larger fish. You see schools of tiny fish, but the big ones take up a lot of space, and you realize how many animals, like moving things, has God created on this earth. Ooh, trillions.
Wow. Okay. Looking back on your life, what's the most impactful commitment you've made in your life?
That is a great question. The most impactful commitment that I've made in my life was to do household my first round, my junior year of college at Arizona State. That was the most impactful commitment that I've made up until this point in my life, and maybe forever. That changed the trajectory of my life. Yeah, forever.
How?
I was on semester at sea. Before semester at sea, I had just met the missionaries. Jeff Kroc invites me, a missionary at the time, says, you should do household. I say, no, it's too extreme of a jump from the fraternity house to the SPO house.
Yeah.
Then I sail on semester at sea. Day 66 happens. CDC declares pandemic. President Trump at the time is like, you can't fly here. We're all stressing out. My relationships on the ship, particularly with women, are blowing up. And I realized that the weight I was supposed to put on God's shoulders, I put on the ship, and it basically sank her. It sank the ship. And that day I called Jeff Kroc from a landline in my room, and I was like, I want a spot in that house. And of course I got his voicemail. We're on opposite sides of the world. And then I joined the house.
So take us back. Okay, so that is...
I know, like I want the backstory.
20. So what day is that?
March 10th, 2020.
Yeah, the whole world is about to erupt.
Yes.
With COVID, everything's shutting down, everything's
Correct.
locking down. You are where in the world on that date?
We had just left Mauritius. We're heading south towards South Africa.
Okay. And so this global pandemic is about to emerge. It's happening. So then what happens to semester? You're on this, you began when? You left port when?
January 6, 2020.
Right.
So we were sailing towards China before it broke out. And then the 2 days before it broke out, we thankfully diverted. If we would have landed in China or ported there, our whole semester at sea would have been over. But thankfully we didn't, and we audibled to Vietnam, which didn't have any virus at the time.
Okay.
Yeah,
so then you were able to continue.
So we were able to continue for 3 months. It was supposed to go for 110 days. And then what your question was, we ended in South Africa and we all flew home. We were supposed to make it up to Amsterdam, all the way up.
But you kind of turned around. You went to Vietnam and then you came back to...
We went to Vietnam, sailed across the Indian Ocean along the equator. Some of us got fried. The Irish people, you should have seen them. They were just destroyed. 3rd-degree burns. Yeah. The Sicilians got really tan. And then we went straight down to Mauritius, and then Mauritius is pretty close to South Africa.
Wow. And then you flew home.
Yes.
That wasn't the original plan.
No, correct.
No. So then, okay, so...
We ended at a completely different continent. Crazy.
So then why did you call... So you are a student at Arizona State University at that time.
Correct.
You're now a missionary with SPO. This is your first year.
That is correct.
Welcome to staff.
Thank you so much.
You serve at University of St. Thomas.
I do. It is an absolute joy and a pleasure.
No, that's awesome.
Amazing.
So then why did you call Jeff Kroc that day? And because he's a missionary with SPO. He's in the household.
Yep.
Why was the call to him?
He was the one that had invited me, and I guess when I told him no, in my heart of hearts, I would say that I was still thinking about it. That in some dream land, if I were to have an experience as I did on semester at sea, I could call him back and still get that spot. But truthfully, like on paper, I'd forfeited my spot. I told him, no, don't reserve a spot for me. I'm out. And then the reason I called him back was because he was the one I owed like an answer to. If I was going to get involved in the house, that's who I was going to call. And the reason I called him was because the Lord gifted me with an experience that I'm so forever grateful for. Not many people have experienced it, but basically it was gone before it came. And it was like every single thing in my body, every yearning or like longing or desiring. It's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you go for that glass of water. J.P. Bagul is a coined term called night water, and it just quenches your thirst, and it's like the best water ever. It was like night water, but for every desire, every longing, and it was all quenched in a moment. And then, of course, I was back to normal, and like the longings came, and I realized that was like a glimpse of heaven. That was That was God. I'm not on psychedelics. I'm completely sober, just washed over me. And the only thing I knew, the reason I knew it was God is because the only thing I knew when it had passed was that I was loved. And knowing that you're loved changes everything. Every single decision that you make, how you react to circumstances. And so my reaction was to go buy a calling card for $40, type in this crazy landline thing. And there's only 4 outgoing calls on the ship at any time. So I had to keep pressing in the type code 28 times to get to Jeff Kroc to go through. And of course I got his voicemail expecting that. It's the happiest I've ever been to get somebody's voicemail. Yeah. Crazy. Left him the voicemail.
So were you able to move in when you got back?
And then
or was this like fall?
This was the spring, and then I got back and it was summertime, COVID summer, and then I moved in the next fall semester.
Yeah.
With 14 strangers. Because Jeff moved away to discern the brotherhood in Florida. So I was just left with JP, only person I knew.
So why was that commitment? I mean, that's an incredible kind of getting you to that moment. You're on you're halfway around the world. You have this transformative experience of God, his love, and moving you towards choosing this. Why was that commitment so impactful?
Sure. I think that commitment was so impactful because I didn't think I could do it. And in fact, I knew I could not do the commitments of household. Should I mention the commitments of household?
Do it. Yeah.
We had, morning prayer commitments. We were all around the table at 6:10 every single day, Monday through Thursday. We had household dinners 2 times a week. We had formation. We had small group, which were separate things. Lord's Days on every other Saturday. Other commitments, just being around the house. Chores. The fraternity had a lot of these commitments like chapter and like chores as well. But as you can imagine, those really didn't get accomplished. These were hard and fast commitments. So I went from having 0 commitments to over a dozen hours of committed things in my weekly calendar on top of school. And I realized that it just wasn't going to be possible. And actually when Jeff Kroc interviewed me, because he already asked me, but he interviewed me later. And I told him, like, as he was telling me the commitment, stop. Like, Jeff, stop. I don't know if I can hear all of these things. Like, it's too much. But if you just let me in, I'll figure it out as we go along. But if you keep telling me right now, you're basically going to scare me off. Like, I know that it's going to be too much. And the only way it would work is if God was real and if God was for me. And God was real and he was for me. Because not only did I just survive household, but I thrived. And then giving myself away and then committing, that's where I found life. And it was in that first semester, my fall semester of junior year of household, that I started praying. And I saw other leaders in the house, the missionaries and students, every morning they would take their holy hour. And I was like, man, these guys are committed and I want to do that. And for the first time, my favorite scripture came to life, John 10:10. And the latter half goes, I've come that they might have life and have it to the full. Or another translation says, have it abundantly. I didn't need to sail around the world on a luxury cruise ship. I didn't need to sail around the world, sweet life of Zach and Cody style, to live life to the full. I was living it right there in household. So
it's possible that life can be fuller in that household than a semester at sea. Is that what you're implying?
Yes.
For real?
Yes, truthfully. The community that I learned how to build on semester at sea was what I had in household. Because on semester at sea, it's not just kind of open dining halls. There are set times. And so you eat with your friends, similar to household. We have a set dinner time. We have to be at the table at this time. It's not just always open like you would find at a regular university.
Sure.
So
like a dining hall. Yeah.
Exactly. There's like set hour slots. And so you would go with your friends and share meals there. There's no technology, just like there's nobody checking their phones, or there's no TV on the ship. The technology, the Wi-Fi, sure, we have Wi-Fi in the house, but all of these things were teeing me up. It was actually semester at sea that was the perfect transition, that God placed that ship in my way. Because if I had done a different study abroad, like just going to Italy, which would have been wonderful, I would have had all my regular things. But having these distracted free dinners taught me how to have a conversation without checking my phone. Our conversations weren't about the trends of the world. They were about real deep things, and we bonded. And then I did that at Arizona State to a deeper level.
What does the word commitment mean to you today that it didn't mean? Like, what kind of relationship did you have with that word, that concept before household?
Great question. Commitment meant that was something that I said yes to one time. It was a commitment. It was on my calendar, but it didn't mean that I was going to say yes to it every single time. I think it's Chris Christensen, professor at Harvard, that says it's easier to go all in 100%, to a commitment than to go 99%, because there's still that 1% left in you that has to still decide, that hasn't decided. And you still have to make that little decision every time. But when you go all in 100%, now commitment means I'm going to say yes to this one time. I understand the full scope of what I'm committing to. Here's the time frame. Here is what I'm going to do. And I'm in for every single time.
Like pre-deciding.
Yeah. Like nothing is going to come up unless it's, an emergent. There are right reasons, but now you are going to plan everything else around that. That is not going to move unless something great, like serious, comes up, or you have a fever and you're going to get somebody sick. No school, no work, all that off the table.
What do you think God has taught you through commitment that he might not have taught you otherwise?
That is awesome. An awesome question. Everything that I did my freshman and sophomore year at ASU, it was in the spirit of control, basically. I didn't want to commit to a woman. I didn't want to commit to the fraternity in a way. And I always say the fraternity is the reason this and that. Like I was just as broken. I was the one that was also not held accountable. I was the one that also missed my chores and didn't go to the philanthropy and didn't support this or didn't buy that t-shirt for the sorority, all of it. But in committing, he taught me that like he is committed. God, if he never changes his love for us based on what we do, like he's not scandalized by our sin. Like if you were to share something deep with me, I kind of look at you a little bit different. Even if I'm not trying to, I'd be like, oh, Ryan did that.
That's real.
Like God and priests also try to, the more they grow in holiness, the more they're less scandalized by sin. Weird thing there. So I realized that God sees me and is committed to me. And so if I can commit to things, that I grow closer to God because I'm more like God. We're called to imitate Christ. And Jesus was committed to his disciples. And I realized that if he was going to make a commitment, like he wouldn't back out of it. You got to be a man of your word. And that's what making a commitment is. And that's why I don't kind of go around on campus. And it's so tempting when you see so many students and you know so many students and you have such an influence and you say, yeah, we'll hang later. I'll see you later. Or, yeah, let's talk soon. Let's go out soon. All those like little things, like you actually got to recognize what you're saying. You're making all those little promises. And so if I'm going to say something like that, I'm going to pull the person over here and put it on the calendar and say, okay, let's do something soon. Well, what does that mean? This can be frustrating. It doesn't honor them well if you just keep saying stuff like that and then don't, because they remember that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's surprising to students, like to have that intentionality when you're like, yeah, because I think it can be so easy just to throw on like, see you later. Like, does that surprise them?
Absolutely. It's surprising and refreshing. And it loves them so well. And they're not used to that. And then when they say it back to you, and then you go over and they're like, hey, well, we'll hang soon. We'll talk soon. Oh, let's plan it right now. Let's go. And then you really see where they're at with that. Yeah. I love doing that. That's yes. Cool. It's amazing.
Where in your life right now do you struggle to trust God? Because you made some commitments. You're in.
I'm in. I'm all in.
But you're still here. You're not Saint Johnny yet up in heaven. So there's still some work to do, right?
Right. Thank God.
Yeah. Thank God. Right.
Thank God.
But like, where's the struggle? I hear the power of commitment, and it sounds like that's had a transformative effect in your life.
Yeah. It's so easy, Ryan, to look back and to see all of the good that the Lord has done for me, and then to remember, just like in the Old Testament, when they crossed the Jordan River and the Lord parted the rushing river. And so to remember, they each took a rock for the 12 tribes of Israel and they put it on a mantle, a place where they could all see it, to just remember, like a physical representation. That's so powerful. And that's why I journal every single day and journal while I'm praying. And when the Lord does something, I'm going to write that down. So when I forget or when I'm in desolation, stuff like that, I can go back and I can look at it. So it's easy for me to look back and see a lot of fruit. But where I kind of struggle to trust in God, where my relationship is hard, is now in the future. Because I doubt that God's so good that he's going to continue doing great things. And so I often, instead of reflecting on the past and kind of dwelling on the future and thinking, what does God have next for me? For vocation, I think I want to be married. It's like, God, I have like the girl lined up. I'm single for a season because it's my first year as a missionary. And so I'm being super intentional with my time and focusing all on students without any distractions. And that has had so much fruit. And that's a great decision. I'm proud of that decision. And I think it's a great thing that SPO does. But like what if someone walks into my life that's just levels me, right? The bombshell. And I'm like, no, like I'm in the middle of this. Yeah, like all that stuff. That's what the struggle is. Custody of eyes, like on campus. It's difficult even for a missionary, for a priest, for anybody. And so I need to be better and be quick to pray for them and not to lust and to do other things. But yeah, mainly centered around the future because I don't have a journal. I can't look back. I look ahead.
You can't see your future journal.
Future journal.
I see my future journal.
Talk to your future self.
If there was like a mode where God could ask me a question, do you want to see the rest of your life played out? Do you want me to fill out the rest of your journals and then you could go like read them? I would say like, yes, 100%. And like scour through them and spend all day and all night like reading through. And that's a disordered desire. That's not good. That's not how it should be. I need to be free. And that shows that I'm not present. And the present is a present. Sometimes I'm not present.
Can you tell us about something you wrote in the last few days in your journal?
Yeah. Dear Lord, I hate fasting. Why do you make me fast? I am hungry. Can I please eat and drink? I want food.
No, seriously, is that in there or are you just messing?
I'm not messing at all, Ryan. I struggle with fasting. And it was in there because it was Ash Wednesday and then Friday we do no meat. And one of the things on top of this from one of my Lenten commitments already was once a week to do a breakfast or a lunch and then pop that out. Because I realized that my day was just so centered around like food and I needed to have, and of course, you know, I'm like well fed and I'm healthy, but I just get so quick to like anger and I get distracted and I can't think straight. And it's like, Jesus went 40 days and 40 nights. And
then was tempted by the devil.
And then was tempted. And so I realized that I was fasting well and I was not sometimes, you know, not showing it and being good there, but I would forget to like offer it up. I would forget why I'm doing it. And so when a hunger growl would come, I wouldn't think about Jesus and like why I'm doing this. I'd just be like, oh my gosh, when is this over? And so I'm looking forward to more fasting this Lent to get better at that. But that's an area where I was struggling. Even this morning, we were low on eggs. I had to go to Brugger's and get a bagel before this, or else I'd be done already. I'd tap out.
Well, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to a student or a young adult who's like just getting started or even maybe deep into their faith, like what would you say to them?
That's a great question. I would say lean so far on God that if he was not there, you would fall. That's what I would say.
What do you mean by that?
I think that we get comfortable and we want to have control over how much like we're trusting in God. Can I really give this to him or that thing? But what I've found is that when I really do like a trust fall and I lean so far over on him that if he wasn't there, I would fall. And then I realize that I'm still standing.
Yeah.
That I have not fallen. Then all the doubts of God's not real or he doesn't love me or he's not for me, they go away. And I realize he is so good. Mm-hmm. Because you see priests, you see religious. I just went to Tijuana with the Missionaries of Charity and you see all these examples. Like look at all these signs. They are leaning so far on God all the time, especially people in consecrated religious, that if he's not real, then they should be face planting every single day. People should be really struggling. And when you meet those men and women, they're like the most joyous people that you meet, right? It makes no sense. They're not doing it by their own grit. If I learned anything from my own sins, I can't do it. So it's amazing. That's what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a real challenge. It's good. And
I also say one last thing, really think about and like respect priests. I don't know if that makes sense. And like religious, you know, wherever you can, give more respect to them. When I talk to Brother Logan, don't say like bro or I don't know. I just hate doing that. I'd rather say like Brother Logan and just say the whole thing because they like deserve that, you know, what they've done. Think about how big of a commitment they're making to God. And if that can help you with taking a next step in your faith journey, look at the ones for decades that they've been making.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing today. We're just going to wrap up with some rapid fire hot seat questions. So
sure, let's
goal
do
is
it.
quick.
Rapid fire.
Just going to go. All right.
Here we go.
So if you could text anybody, but they wouldn't know it's you, who would you text and what would you say?
I would text Michael Jordan, and I would say my dad says hi.
Nice.
What are you scared of?
I am scared of my own insecurities. I am scared of people thinking that I am scared of anything.
Meta.
Yeah. What is a creative talent that you have?
I love to draw, and I'm pretty good at drawing.
What is your top memory, favorite memory from the last year?
Ooh, Siesta Key for 2 days after SPO's Ascend conference in Florida. One of the best memories of the past 5 years.
That's awesome. Your biggest non-regret.
What does that mean?
So like, so you are very, like maybe it's like a little crazy, a little out there, but like you're so happy that you did it.
I guess. Say that. Bungee jumping.
Yeah.
Very freeing.
Do you have any hobbies?
Yes.
Give us a weird one.
A weird one. I used to paint and collect and play with Warhammer 40K, which is something that Nathan Metzinger would know about. He's big into board games. But you basically create the whole game and you like paint these pieces, and it's like Risk, but with scarier type pieces played on a massive board. Like it'd fill this whole room.
That's not nerdy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's a big board.
Not at all.
No.
So manly.
Yeah. And you carry on these huge baskets. I started it when I broke my leg. My parents, God bless them, they spent money on that game.
Huge baskets of little figurines.
Yes.
Scary
Briefcases.
ones.
Yeah.
Oh, shudder to think.
All painted.
One of the teams was the Necrons. Very intimidating.
Well, I don't know what any of that means, but that's awesome.
Look out for the Necrons.
It just sounds very scary, very intimidating, but also fun and cute, maybe, because you can put them in a basket.
I'll have to Google that later, see what it all looks like.
A lot of things to Google. That was hard to not ask so many follow-up questions.
Yeah,
So I'm going
might
to
have
resist
to
that.
after this all ends.
Johnny, you're awesome, dude. Thanks so much for joining us on All My Life, SPO's brand new podcast, deep dives into lifelong discipleship.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for going there. Thanks for sharing your story. Folks can check out the podcast on YouTube, all the podcast places. Rate, review, hit follow,
Subscribe.
subscribe,
Give us 5 stars.
all of the stars. We'll see you next time.